Hello, and welcome to the Smile Revolution with Princess Wow. I was on hiatus for a while, for months, because I was performing my stage shows in venues and I was really busy doing that. Well, anyway, this is the 194th show since the pandemic. Anyway, I'm a comedic performer, storyteller, and hat designer, singer, and do one-woman shows and hat happenings. And so welcome back to my show. I'm really excited. It's my first show back. It's going to be Mondays at 8 o'clock Eastern time and on demand. So since the Bob Dylan movie came out Christmas Day, and everybody talking about it, I decided to do a Bob Dylan series right now. Around a year ago, I was invited, Richard Barone invited me to his concert based on his book, Music Plus Revolution, Greenwich Village in the 1960s, which is an amazing book if you haven't read it. And so he had a concert at Carnegie Hall, and I was invited to the after party. And so I met, I already met Terry Thal, who was Bob Dylan's first manager, and interviewed her, which is going to be coming up soon. And a new interview with her based on what she thought of the movie. And she was married to Dave Van Ronk, and Tom Paxton, who was best friends with Dave Van Ronk and knew Dylan, of course, and some other people. So, and I've got David Amram, who was friends with Dylan, my husband, Roland Musa, who met Dylan, was friends with him, they met through David Amram. Anyway, I've got other people lined. I'm working on getting other people, and I've got other interviews from last year. So tonight is Carolyn Hester, who she was a big deal back then in the early 60s in Greenwich Village. And she was signed to Columbia Records in 1960 with John Hammond. And so she discovered Dylan's talent, and he played on her third album with Columbia Records. And that's how John Hammond discovered him and signed him right away. So that's just a little bit about her. And I just want to say really quick, I've been accepted, this is me personally, I've been accepted into this festival in Newburgh, New York, in the Hudson Valley. It's called the New Bohemian Now Festival, and it's artists who lived in Williamsburg before 2000. And so I'm really excited about it. It's going to be at Untouchables in Newburgh, Friday, February 7th. If anybody lives in the Hudson Valley or New York City wants to come, I'll be doing a short set. And then the snow date is February 8th. So it's the Untouchables in Newburgh. So I just want to let everybody know who's anywhere local. So anybody in the world could be watching this in replay or live. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to play my interview with Carolyn Hester. It's from a year ago, from January 30th, 2024. Okay.
Hello again.
It's so good to see you.
This is wonderful. You are definitely Princess Wow. You look gorgeous.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. Terrific. Anyway, I always like to talk about how we met.
Okay.
So you performed at one of the most incredible concerts, Music Plus Revolution, and my dear friend Richard Barone produced November 19th, 2023 at Carnegie Hall. And it was such an amazing, wasn't it, like historical? It was just so great.
Yeah, and one of the things that I remember saying at the time to the audience was that this was going to be a multi-generational concert. And it sure was.
It really was, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then, but featuring 1960s songs. And that I think it was unique. And Richard Barone's book is the inspiration for the whole thing.
Right.
And I admire him so much to think that he's a musician himself. Mm-hmm. He's a professor at New School of Social Research and Music. He teaches music. Mm-hmm. And then to write this book all about where he was. The school is at Greenwich Village,
Right. And he
and
lives on Waverly Place. Oh, I shouldn't say
right,
that. Anyway, he lives in the village. I already
and
said it. Okay, but it's okay.
yeah, no, that's okay. And so, at any rate, I was
I know.
very proud to be in his book, and I mean, either to do that concert, you were either in the book, and he'd written about you, and he knew
Right.
who he was bringing on stage. You know what I mean? Or you were a friend of his,
Hmm.
and he just didn't mince any words. He brought his friends with him. It was
Yeah, yeah. It's
yeah.
just everybody was amazing. I'm saying the word amazing too much. My friend told me, trying to come up with some other adjectives. But anyway, but it was one of the greatest concerts, and we were in the front
Yeah,
row. We were in the front row. It was
yeah,
so great.
terrific,
And
terrific,
and I met you at the after party, which we're not going to say where it was, but
terrific.
it was so great to go to the after party and do some
Yeah.
interviews with some of the people. But anyway, and I'm so glad I got to meet you.
Well, same here.
And Richard made sure we got together, you and I.
Yes, but he's sweet.
Right?
Yeah, he was so fine
It's great
to
being part of the
connect
Richard.
us.
Yeah, being part of the Richard Barone family is a good thing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so let's show the audience Richard's book, Music Plus Revolution, for
Okay.
people who may not know about it.
And
Yeah,
isn't it
here it is.
wonderful? And he went to a great deal of trouble to put this together, the design and everything.
Everything.
He
It's
didn't
just,
just hand the project to a publisher and let
yeah,
it go, let it fly. No, he really paid attention to.
every detail.
Right. Yes, he
And
did.
also, he wrote it during the pandemic. Normally, he wouldn't have had time to do it. I mean, he just was able to do it during then and do all his interviews and everything.
Yeah, that's very true.
That's basically what he did, you know.
Yeah. Made very good use of his time.
Yeah.
And now
And
he's teaching the book, that I understand
I
it.
know. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. So it's wonderful. So anyway, so doing a deep dive into your life has been really exciting. So, I know you said, because I watched this other interview of you, like your whole life has just been a surprise, right? You never like really planned all the things that happened, right? They're just right.
Truly. Yeah.
Things just kept coming, and so many exciting things. So anyway, okay, so you helped. I read that you helped launch Gertie's Folk City in 1960.
Yes, they had, Gertie's was a bar on
Right.
4th Street across from NYU. And I don't really know the history of it before it became Folk City, but it was bought by uh, Mike
Mike Porco.
Porco,
Right.
and his brother was with him all the time too, John Porco. So I don't know if he had any ownership himself or whatever, but at any rate, they masterminded this whole thing with the help of um, the Folklore Center, which was on 6th Avenue when I knew about it, around 3rd Street in there. Izzy Young, and
Right.
Izzy was interested in booking some talent in there, making it a folk place, and somehow the partnership between Izzy and the Porcos, maybe that's what didn't work. Those details I never knew, but at any rate, uh, I heard that they were having some folk music in there, whereas most places had been poetry houses, poetry readings,
Right.
and now they were turning to another lone person, like what person with a guitar or with a banjo and all that. And guitars were very in. The banjo somewhat. It was Pete Seeger's instrument, the banjo,
Right.
and then the Kingston Trio was emerging at that point, and Harry Belafonte.
Hmm.
So the scene was set, and guitars and banjos started popping up in the halls of the NYU dorms, and there. So Porco said, "Come on, Carolyn. You when you came over and talked to us while back. We remember you said you had a record coming out. So what happened? I said, yeah, here it is. And I showed them my album, and they said, well, can we have that? Because we feel like there's a lot of folks here in Greenwich Village already. But they said, you're one of the younger ones, and you've got an album already. It was on Coral Records, and that was part of Decca. So they said, we think the kids across the street would come over to see it. And that's what happened. They got me on Oscar Brand, and he played songs from the record. And I was very encouraged because I thought, well, then I think my record sounds right. Do you know what I'm saying? In other words, you never know.
Wait, so were you one of the first?
No.
I'm sorry, go on.
No, that's all right.
Yeah, were you one of the first singers to sing at Gertie's Folk City?
Yes.
Yeah, you were one of the first.
So,
right?
so I was the first one they booked.
You were, okay.
Yeah. So that's what he says in the book, and the truth is, I was not conscious of being the first one at that time. I mean,
That's amazing. That's really great. Wow.
And so I was really excited to get this idea going, and then the other clubs they started lining up. I mean, and then places were like the Bitter End opened and all that, but the Gaslight, that had been there for years. That was a poetry place too, I think.
Oh, I see. So they were all there open, but it was poetry. And then when Gertie's Folk City started,
that's right. That's right.
Then they followed suit.
It led the way. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. Cool.
In other words, we have to give credit. The students led the way. The students came from across the street, and then before the poetry was lessening the musicians, the folk more. The kids were all learning guitars themselves, and they were picking up your songs, and then pretty soon, students from Columbia came downtown. What's going on in the village? That kind of thing, and then the colleges started playing our songs. They had FM stations, so they started having folk shows. And then the colleges started booking these folk acts. For one thing, we weren't very expensive. Pete Seeger was going around the world just with his banjo, and so we followed suit. Me just with the
I see. Oh, that's interesting.
And then we started finding out. Okay, in Boston, there's Club 47, and so we went up there But we were picking up the colleges. I remember like Fairfield University. I played there a bunch, and there was just the whole world opened up. And one of the things that I had said that you mentioned was that things seem to happen like a surprise. So pretty soon, I'm being booked in a lot of cities where I had already been as a child because my father was in World War II. And we followed him before he got shipped out from San Diego, and he is in the Navy. But I went to school in Boston, in San Francisco, San Diego, and so on. And then we went back to Texas to wait for him to come. But in the meantime, before he got shipped out, my parents had gotten very concerned that because enemy submarines would be found on the coast of Jersey and stuff. And so my mom and dad said, I think we need to have you kids go back to Texas.
Wow.
So one of my mother's sisters, my Aunt Lynette, she came and she bundled us up. And so when I was 5 and my brother was 1.
Wow.
And my aunt carried him. And I had a little suitcase. She had a suitcase in him and a purse hanging around her neck. And when we got on the train, soldier boys would stand up and find a seat for her to have that would sit with the baby. Isn't that great? And there was no place really for me, but they didn't mind if I sat on suitcases. At that time, each train had a segment of it for your suitcases, and so I'd fall asleep across these suitcases. And it was an amazing trip. I'll never forget. But look, at 5 years old, I had been to Texas and lived. I had been to California and lived. So when it came to being 21, when my album came out, I was 20 when I recorded, 21 when my album came out, and starting to travel around the country. Well, it was okay. I was okay with that. I wasn't afraid, and that's the kind of thing I was
You're
coming
used to.
into, not realizing that I would have a break like that. I mean, I just loved the music. I
Hmm.
just loved the music so much. I just wanted those chords and those melodies and those lyrics that were different from pop music. I don't know.
So you're born though in Texas, right?
I was born in Texas, but when I was
Like,
about 2.5 years old, my father got a scholarship to Georgetown University Law School in D.C.
mhm.
So when I was at that age, we got on a train, and I remember being on that train. It's because it's such a surprise. I mean, if I was 2.5, I don't think I remember anything else about being 2.5, but I remember being on a train. And so I was brought up then from that time a lot on the East Coast, and then during the war we traveled with Dad, and so on. So uh, I just feel like it was very important to my not being afraid to
Mhm.
go out by myself with a guitar. A lot of families would not let a daughter go and
Right.
do that. But
Mhm.
somehow that's how the whole thing happened. It's like things like then when I was in school, seventh grade, they had a big show, and a teacher came up to me after the show, said, "I loved what you do." She said, uh, "Tomorrow I'm going to bring a record for you to hear, but do you have a record player at home?" And I said, "Yes, we do." And that because they were talking about long playing records.
Mhm.
So uh, so she said, "I'm going to bring a record. It's a girl named Susan Reed, and I want you to hear her." So you see, that's what I'm talking about. Somehow at every stop along the way, something new
Opportunity
was
appears.
introduced
Right.
to
Yeah.
me to make me realize. And Susan Reed was a friend of Burl Ives, who was a friend of Pete Seeger, and all that. So
Everything comes back to Pete Seeger to me.
that's
It's like
right.
there's always
That's right.
who I
Yeah.
was close with because I was married to a folk singer who was close
Oh,
to
you
Pete for
were.
a decade. Yeah. We're still friends. But anyway, that's how I met Richard Barone and Pete and everybody. Yeah. I got
Fabulous.
into the whole world. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. From Woodstock.
Yeah.
Where do you meet musicians? Woodstock, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
had to get to
true.
Woodstock. So anyway, all right. So when did you start though, writing songs and singing though?
um, when my second album was going to come out, what happened was that because I recorded the album in Clovis, New Mexico, because my mother heard about this producer there, Norman Petty, and she said, there's 65 million people around the Southwest here. You could stay home. You could stay home and be a folk singer. The whole
Okay.
thing backfired. The whole thing backfired because when we got over there and the fellow liked my singing, he said, "I don't know much about folk music. Do you think you have enough to make an album?" And I said, "Oh, sure." Well, I didn't quite, but I went home and learned Ye Banks and Braes of Bonnie Doon. And so that
Mhm.
helped me complete it. But he said, "I think I could get you a record deal. I really do." He says, "I have a real successful artist right now, Buddy Holly." Was his
That's
artist.
amazing.
And
Wow.
so that's how I got started. I, fate, uh,
It was
God was
meant to
watching
be. Yeah.
something. You see what I'm
Right.
saying? In other words,
It
and
was your destiny.
but I didn't, I wasn't conscious of it. Things like that. And now looking back, I see the pattern. But when
Hmm.
you're in the middle of it, you don't see that pattern, do you?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But did you write songs as a child? I mean, that's what I'm saying. When
I
did you actually
I came up
start?
with some songs here and there, but the main thing was that on the second album, um, I I made a few. I wrote a few songs, and then the third album I didn't because I had branched out in my musical interest. So let's see. What I should do is look at. Um, let,
So
let
you
me
have
let me
some of your albums, right? Yeah.
let me show you.
Okay.
Okay, so this has got a shiny thing on it, but that was the first album.
Okay.
So that looks like a folk singer, right? I mean, there's that.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then the second album,
And that was what, 1957?
that was when I recorded it. 1958, it came out. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the next album was for the Clancy brothers because they were in New York as I was,
Hmm.
and so and that's what I wanted. I thought I really want to be where folk singers are. And so then uh, I had I started branching out from Robert Burns and so on. So I was doing The Water Is Wide and Virgin Mary and Go Away from My Window. But I also did If I Had a Ribbon Bow, which was on that album that the lady gave me in the seventh grade. If I Had a Ribbon Bow, Susan Reed song. Just
Wow.
it just so and I did Malagueña Salarosa in summertime and all that. So then let me find the Columbia album and
That was your
if I
third
can.
album.
Yeah, and that was the third album. Let's
And
see
that's
here.
when you got Bob Dylan on there as harmonica. We have a whole story. I have to hear about that.
Yeah, but here I tell you what, I've got that. It's a little hard to rifle through that.
Okay.
Let me find here. Okay, so here's what the third album looks like. So they uh, when Bob Dylan invited a bunch of his artist friends like myself and so on into Madison Square Garden with him in 1982, I think it was.
Wait a minute. I have it written down. Wait a second.
I think it was in.
Uh, Wait a minute. Okay, wait. I have a note here. Wait a second. Hold on one sec. I don't know. Now I gotta see. Wait. You mean the 30th anniversary tribute?
Yes, his 30th anniversary
That
tribute.
was 1992.
Yeah, 1992. Okay, 1992.
And you sang with Nancy Griffith.
That's right. And I just sang along with her on something. But it reminded
Boots of
Columbia,
Spanish leather.
Boots of Spanish Leather.
Yeah.
So that reminded Columbia that they had me, and so they brought this out and
Oh,
on
that's a
CD.
reissue. That's a reissue.
So this is yeah, because we didn't have CDs,
Right. Right.
in the 50s. So
Yeah.
this was a thing, and so this was really important to me because I felt like, well, that's one of the things that if you're a performer, as myself, in other words, a senior, you want to be. I mean, if you don't make it to the latest tech, if you don't if your product can't be found on the latest technology, uh, that's a problem. And so
Right.
this was
Right.
just so Bob Dylan honored me by inviting me and
Oh, that's
yeah, there
wonderful.
was Nancy too, who I loved. She was a close friend, and
Yeah, and
so
I'm friends with the Kennedys who worked with her.
oh, the
Met the
Kennedys,
Kennedys from Richard Barone.
oh, the
Yeah,
Kennedys,
they're wonderful.
oh. I had an experience with them right lately, which
Oh,
was to
good.
do with uh, uh, them getting a show on the radio that they were going to interview an artist, and then they're going to have an artist talk about some of their favorite artists, and they picked me to be one of
Oh,
them.
great. Oh, that's great. That's wonderful.
So that was just they're lovely. They're
Yeah,
just
they're
lovely.
wonderful people and they're so talented.
Oh, both of them, yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, let's talk about though. Back in 1961, when it was an unknown. Well, Dylan. You met Dylan, and then you were working with your third album. So let's
Right.
tell the audience about that. How that all
So
happened.
yeah, so what happened was I'm playing at Gertie's,
Hmm.
and it gets late at night, and there's a few people still hanging, and so it's the third set, and I'm thinking, oh, what should I do next? So I thought, well, I'm just gonna do Buddy Holly. I did Lonesome Tears, it's a Buddy Holly song. So a young man pulls his chair up beside the little stage they had up kind of beside me. And he says, "Did you really know Buddy Holly?"
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Oh, yeah." I said, I actually was at his last recording session, unfortunately, too,
Oh,
here in New
I
York,
know.
And he says, "You really did know him?" He says, "Well, he says, I just think that's fascinating that you did. I'm glad you did the Buddy Holly song." I said, "Oh, great." Anyway, after the show, he comes back into the kitchen, the famous Gertie's kitchen, and he starts talking to me, and he said, "Well, uh, I want to look you up again sometime." I said, "Oh, that'd be great." And I said, he said, "You know, I don't know how to put this, but," he said, "I'm trying to get going playing. I play harp, I play guitar, and I write songs." And he said, "Van Ronk is trying to help me, Dave Van Ronk and Terry." I said,
Yeah.
"Ah, fabulous." I said, "That's good." He says, "Well, it's kind of hard going." Anyway, so he says, "Well, uh, we'll see you again soon." I said, "Oh, for sure." Next thing I know,
Hmm.
he hitchhikes to Boston.
Right.
I had no idea. I didn't even know for decades until he wrote Chronicles.
Really?
Until he wrote Chronicles,
Uh-huh.
I never knew about his whole thing that he was going to throw himself at me, kind of.
Oh, wow.
He's so tremendous. He hitchhiked to Boston.
Uh-huh.
I'm playing at uh, the Club 47. It's at the original address, 47 Mount Auburn, and then they move it into Harvard Square after that. But he talks the person booking it, Paula Kelly was her name, into letting him open for saying, "Oh, she's a friend of mine. Yeah, I'm sure this will be okay." And Paula says, "Well, okay." And so he opened, but when he even opened and sang that, I thought, "Oh, that kid gets around." I had no idea this was it.
That's funny.
Okay. So the next day,
Uh-huh.
uh, I'm going to the beach with friends, and 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 he shows up. He goes to the beach with the same friends. How about
Oh,
that?
wow.
And so then we're sitting on the beach, and he says, uh, last night I opened for you, and I said, "You were terrific. I love what you do." And he says, "Well," he said, I really, he says, "If in your next bookings, if I could be part of it or something, I could open for you like I did." And isn't that amazing?
Uh-huh.
And I said, "Listen, Bob, I'm not doing any of that right now just because we're making an album next."
Uh-huh.
And I said, "Haven't you heard John Hammond is looking for folk singers?" So that's how it all happened. And he
That
says,
perk his ears up.
and I said, "Look," I said, I've got the greatest guitar player in the world in my book, uh, Bruce Langhorne. I
Hmm.
said, "John Hammond has promised me Bill Lee, who played on one of Odetta's albums." So that's how I got him. I said, "Amazing." I said, "So the thing is, I tell you what," I said, "my father played harmonica on my first album, on the Wreck of the Old 97, this whole song. If you would play harp, I'd really appreciate it. And I don't know if it would be 3 or 4 songs or something, and it doesn't make a whole lot of money.
Hmm.
It's a musician, it's a union session." He says, "Here's my phone number. Don't
Yeah.
lose
Yeah.
it."
Uh-huh.
And so I said, "Okay." I said, "I've heard you play. I know you're gonna be terrific."
Right.
He said, "So I'll tell Hammond, and so on." Okay, so when I introduced the idea to John Hammond, he says, "Well, I know what to expect from you. I know what your levels are and everything." He says, "But I haven't heard your band now, so we got to do something. So do you have a rehearsal? Will you invite me to the rehearsal so I can hear it?" And that's what happened. That was his first meeting. I introduced Bob to Hammond that night, and we all sat at a picnic table in a borrowed kitchen in the village on 10th Street, and when wailed, and Hammond bought it, and so that's how the album happened. And the album is adventuresome for that day and time for a woman playing, uh, and uh, and I feel like it's beginning to stand on its own, that album, which I'm very proud of, because I had brought in all these kinds of songs, and Dylan suggested a blues that's on there, um, and uh, so I learned it, and even we even did that. He knew I was a kind of a musical gambler, because he is,
Hmm.
he has been all the way, and so I feel very proud of not only him but the album and what he has done, and how he went on to Columbia as a folk singer, and uh, he became sort of Hammond's Folly or something like that,
Hmm.
until he started writing songs and speaking to hearts, speaking to souls,
Right.
talking about what's going on now. What are we worried about? What are we afraid of? What do we got to be brave about? I
Hmm.
mean, it's anyway. I think Richard has tried to say all that in his book.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yep. And also Peter, Paul, Mary, you were invited before Mary came in, right? Now, what happened with that?
Well, that was an idea that Al Grossman had for years going. He wanted to have a trio, two guys and a girl, and so he had Bob Gibson and uh, I can't think of the other guy's name, Ray Bogoslav and Bob Gibson, and then he decided to invite me to do it. And so we would have been the Peter, Paul, and Mary. But I already had these albums, these solo albums. I was being accepted as a solo,
Oh, I
and
see.
I'd sung in some groups, but I just felt like I had my hands full already.
Okay.
I wasn't going to venture off in that direction,
Oh, I
uh,
see.
and so uh, I I feel very close to Peter, Paul, and Mary. I've known Peter very well. Yes, I've known Peter Yarrow very well, due to helping start the Kerrville Folk Festival in Texas, and he was one of the directors of that, and I was too. And
Oh.
so I feel very close to him. Um, and Noel Paul
Hmm.
Stuckey,
Right.
he's a brilliant guy and a
Hmm.
very very kind person. Mary, I didn't know as well,
Okay.
uh, but I enjoyed shows that I did with them, and very very much.
Okay. Okay, great. So basically, so did you get to New York in 1960, or when exactly did you land? And like, did you immediately have success? Like, all of a sudden at Gertie's, immediate?
No, I went there in 1955. I just got out
Oh.
of high school, and I had been offered a scholarship, a music scholarship, to the University of Colorado at Boulder, because I
Uh-huh.
graduated high school in Denver. Although I had gone most of my high school was in Texas. But anyway, my parents had job changes. One of them worked for Social Security, and the other one worked for the Veterans Administration. And anyway, all these offices got consolidated over there in Denver. A lot of them, anyway. So that's what happened. So it was just getting lifted out of my regular environment, which being in Texas still, I would have gone with my friends to probably UT in Austin.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? In other words,
Yeah.
wow, something happened there. And but I got offered that music scholarship. But then another thing happened that was in both high schools. For some reason, the people hearing me sing, play the guitar, they used photographs of me on the end page of the school yearbook. And if that something like that happens to you, you think, well, people are hearing me. Do you know what
Maybe
I'm
you should go in
saying?
that direction. Right.
And of course, that's what I wanted so much, and I was willing to go by myself. Go do that. And so at any rate, I'm just telling you these seeds of all this that uh, looking back, is easier
Mhm.
than going through that. And you don't really know what it all means. You know what I mean? And you,
Right, right.
yeah,
When you're living it, yeah. So, you were on the cover of the Saturday Evening Post. Now, when was that? Was that? I think that was the early '60s, right, or
yeah,
'64,
yeah.
something.
It was. I think it was 65,
'65.
possibly.
Okay.
Oh no, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, so in the mid.
It was in 64 because well, let me see. There's a copy of it around the house here somewhere. I can look at it.
Oh
It
yeah,
was either
that.
64 or
Yeah,
65, so
that's
I don't.
fine. Yeah, that's okay.
But what happened was,
How did that happen?
well, they were covering folk singers, and so they covered Peter, Paul, Mary, and Judy Collins and myself.
Hmm.
But then a whole host of other people were in the article. It was just a general look at the uh, the folk
The
fad
rising
is the way
folk.
they put
Okay,
it.
yeah, right.
The folk fad, and we were the folk fad. And
Uh-huh.
so uh, when they took the picture, they told me that May, May in May is uh, JFK's birthday. And so they may not put you on the cover. They may put JFK or they may put Jackie on the cover. And I says, but the big feature in the magazine is you guys. So they might use you or Peter Paul and Mary or Judy Collins or whatever. And so going into that, I wasn't really counting on that happening. And it turned out the day it came out, I had a booking at the University of Chicago to do a concert. It was be part of a big folk festival they were putting on. And so a friend of mine, George and Jerry Armstrong, friends of mine, came to the airport and picked me up. They're Chicago, they were Chicago based folk musicians. Love them. And so one of the things they did was say, well, why don't we go get some hot tea for you on the way to I said, oh, that'd be great. So we went there, and then on the way, oh, let's walk in here. Let's get a box of Kleenex. This and that way, they were just wandering around. And when we walked into that drugstore, there on the floor was a stack of Saturday Evening Post like that, and me
Wow,
on it. And then
that's so cool.
it was a weird way to find out, but anyway, so
That's so neat. That's really cool. So,
very.
so you did get a Lifetime Achievement Award in 2003 with the World Folk Music Association. Congratulations.
Thank you. That was very fine,
Yeah,
very
that's
kind.
really neat. And then also in 2000 on A&E, you appeared on what, the biography of Bob Dylan. You were in that.
Yes, yes. They just came to everybody's home or whatever, or if you didn't want to be interviewed at your home, well, they would fix up something. They seemed to be very patient, and they had all the money in the world, and they could just go anywhere. Yeah,
Oh,
that
that's
was
really neat.
very
That's really
nice. Yeah.
great. And then you, Tom Paxton, who I interviewed recently, who's such a wonderful person. I just adore.
Oh, you lucky. Okay.
I am. I know, because he's so. I just adore him. Isn't he such? Well, you've known him forever. He's such a neat guy and so talented and
Yes.
amazing. Really, I can't. I have to stop saying amazing.
Well,
Okay.
let me show you one more thing then to
And
make
you
it.
did. Well, one of your albums was you did
Yeah,
a whole Tom Paxton tribute in 1999.
yeah. Here it is.
I know.
And the odd thing is that see that picture of him
Uh
in
huh.
there.
Uh huh.
Well, that was something that I was given by a friend who had taken some photographs of me in Florida, and I know that Paxton had done some folk festivals in Florida, and my friend had snapped that of him. So uh, so when it came to like do the cover, I just got this idea. I thought I need to honor him some way. So I got roses, and I made a little bouquet there,
No,
and
that's nice.
then I got that picture out. I had a nice frame. It's sort of a gilded frame,
Okay. Oh.
and I put that. And so then I just held all that up close to me
Uh huh.
to show, my affection. And then
Oh.
it's called a Tom Paxton tribute. And he then wrote some notes for me. And there's a picture that Midge, his wife. Let me see if I can get this right.
Oh, that's great.
Midge took so that's my husband, David.
Okay.
David Bloom. And then Tom in the middle, and then me. And Midge took that picture. Isn't that just wonderful?
That's wonderful.
And he wrote a nice note to me.
Oh, so that's in there. Oh, that's great.
Oh, well, I just felt so happy with it. And then it's one of my favorite albums that I've ever done. And then one of the things that had happened was that my David was in the music business, and he was the principal in the end producer for Hugo Montenegro. It did movie scores and things like that. So they had a wonderful time. And David wrote a hit song with his songwriting partner, Jerry Keller. It was called Turn Down Day. And
I remember that song in the 60s. I remember it was a big hit.
Big hit, yeah.
I know. So he wrote that with a...
He wrote that with Jerry Keller, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, so David was playing. He after we met, he didn't follow his jazz as much as he loved his jazz so much.
Okay.
He started playing with me, and that's great. I mean, it's a little bit of a sacrifice in a sense, but he never said that. He never said it was a sacrifice. Right. I knowing his mind was so brilliant. So at any rate, so David does all these arrangements, and he and I play on all these things. And
that's great.
And I just love it. And we started with "The Peace Will Come." That's a great song that Tom wrote a long time ago, and I hope it's still true.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I'm gonna have to listen to that. I'm excited to hear that. And then now, how are you? You have this. You're called the Texas Songbird. How did that happen?
Oh,
okay.
That. A record company that I put out maybe 4 albums with in England. It was called Road Goes On Forever, and the gentleman running that was John Tobler, and he wrote a lot of articles for some of the folk publications, and he'd also worked at Columbia Records in England, but I knew him after that. But at any rate, he just started calling me the Texas Songbird, and he named one of the albums that I made for them, and that's all songs I wrote.
Okay.
The Texas Songbird, yeah.
Okay, great. And then with Pete Seeger, you were the one, you spearheaded the boycott on the Hootenanny when he was blacklisted? Because I know Pete didn't want you all to do that, I heard.
Yeah, well, he called me and said, "Oh, you just go back to the show.
Right.
It's going to be so important for folk music to have this."
Right, exactly.
And I said, "But Pete, I'm here because of you.
Right.
You have a right to state your beliefs. It hurts me that you would get banned from the Hootenanny show. They've put money into it. There's wonderful artists on it, but I think they all agree with me, or at least the ones I know.
Right.
And so all the people, I mean, Paxton and
they were all part of it.
Phil Oakes and and Eric Anderson and all these, they all agreed, and so I called. I can't think of his name. Harold Leventhal, Pete's manager, and I said, "I am so embarrassed." I said, "I've done the Hootenanny show, not knowing anything like this was popping up." I said, "I read something in the Village Voice about it." I said, "I'm horrified. What can I do?" And he says, "Judy Collins called me today too." He says, "Why don't the two of you come up and visit me?" And so that's how it happened. And so Art DeLugoff, the Village Gate, he turned the club over to us one afternoon, and we invited all the people interested. We had a full house of people wanting to talk about it, and so I introduced the first speaker, and then it happened. And so, I mean, I don't feel like that I'm totally responsible for everything. It was Pete, and how much we revere Pete,
Right.
and that made us feel like we've got to do this. We've got to stick together.
Right.
And I think that made a difference. I think it made a difference in our lives. I think it made a difference to us keeping on making music.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not
Wow.
on television or something
Right.
because of that
Yeah.
show,
Uh-huh.
but in writing and in sticking by what we believe in. Honestly.
Oh, that's
Mm.
great. That's really neat. That's great. So, so these days, you now, I know your husband passed away. I'm sorry, in
Yes.
2006.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, yeah. So nowadays, you are performing with your daughters, Amy Bloom and Carla Bloom, right?
Yeah.
Since 2022.
Yes.
So
That's
that's
right.
really great. Yeah, that's great.
And we've done this one album, but we are making another album.
Oh,
But
good.
the first album is called "We Dream Forever," and that song was written by Carla. And then there's some other songs on it she and I wrote together, and so on. And I also
Great.
make it the ending song. The last song is "Last Night I Had the Strangest Dream," and I just think that Ed McCurdy. So you know,
Oh, that's really great. That's wonderful. And then
so you
the
can
other,
sing it. So you can sing your beliefs. Okay.
uh-huh. Yep. And then with your husband, David, you had a dance club in LA.
Yes, he passed away when we were like in our 30th year, and I ran it for one more year with my
Mhm.
kids. And then we decided we wanted to make music, and
Okay.
so
Okay,
that's
great.
when we stopped. It was called Cafe Danza, and it meant a great deal to us. And in that way, even when I wasn't out on the road, I had folk music with me. I loved that.
And you're based in LA, right?
No, I am in Kansas now
Oh, you're in
because
Kansas. Oh,
yeah,
you,
yeah,
you were in LA for a long time, right?
right. And then even Carla was based in LA, but she's going to be based here in Kansas too. So I am with Amy and her husband and the twins, and
Right.
they're
Congratulations.
about to be 9 months old.
That's great.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
listen, it's really
That's
beautiful.
wonderful. That's
Thank you.
great. That's really neat.
That's another surprise. How about that?
Yeah. Now grandmother.
That's right. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
But
That's
I have
great.
some step grandchildren too. I love very much that from David's first marriage,
Oh, okay.
and they're college age, and they've been delightful in my life. So
That's great. That's great. Well, is there anything else you want to say to wrap this up?
well, just everybody look up Richard Barone and his book Music Plus Revolution, and you'll learn a lot of
Oh,
things.
it's
And look some of the writing. I told him, right. They asked me to do a quote, so there's a quote from me on the back or something of
great.
the book. But I told him, I said, what you wrote about Tiny Tim.
Hmm.
I said I had to read it 3-4 times before I could go on reading the book.
Really?
It's lovely. It's just outstanding.
I
Yeah.
bet he wrote about Tiny Tim. Yeah, I know because he produced one of his albums.
Oh, did he really? See, I didn't
Yeah.
even know
Like
that.
when he was like when he wasn't as famous, like when he was on his, when he was later in, in his career.
When he was developing. Yeah. Well,
No,
that's
later,
great.
like after his career was waning. I think that's when Richard met him in Florida when Richard was like in high school or something.
Uh-huh.
And he
Interesting.
produced one of his albums. Yeah. But
Incredible.
Tiny Tim, like one time this is just funny, a side note. One time I was walking down the street with Richard Barone, and everybody always looks at me, right, wherever I go, because
Of
I dress
course.
so unusual, right? So he said, I feel like I'm with Tiny Tim. That's what he said to me one time. I'll never forget that.
Very good.
Yes,
Okay.
that was good. Well,
Thank
anyway,
you so
it's been a
much.
delight to talk to you and to learn more about your career.
Well, thank you so much, and
And
it's
it's
lovely to be with you. And I think you're waving the flag right along with me, waving the flag. We
thank
dream
you.
forever.
Yeah. And it's wonderful that you continue to carry on and keep creating, which is wonderful because artists don't retire. So,
And that's what
right.
Amy has taught me, that Liz.
Well, it's true. We have to keep creating.
That's right.
But you did take a pause for a while when you were raising them, right?
Yeah, I didn't travel for 9 or 10 years, but I kept on but I helped start the Kerrville Folk Festival, and I would go there once a year.
Okay.
Like Memorial Day weekend, I would do that. And so there's a picture in a Texas newspaper of 3-year-old Amy singing "Ascending Woman," one of my songs, with me at the festival.
Wow, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, so that was fun.
Okay, well, great. Well, I'm really so amazed, and your career is just so exciting. I'm so glad to be learning more about your music and everything, and you're just such a delight.
Well, thank you. You are, and so I can't wait till next time. I'll come back to New York and we'll get together.
Oh, I would love that. That would be great. Okay, that'd be wonderful. So anyway, well, happy birthday. Your birthday is this Sunday.
That's right. Thank you.
So it's good timing to get you on the air.
Oh, wonderful. Take care of yourself.
You too.
Okay.
Thanks so much again.
We'll keep marching. We'll keep marching.
We are. We keep. That's what Pete would say. Pete would always say, "Keep on keeping on." Right.
That's right.
Right. That was how he would sign off his notes.
His spirit was with us today.
Yeah.
Okay. No, take care, Dawn.
Thank you so much. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope you all enjoyed that if you're still watching or on replay, and fascinating and wonderful person. Anyway, so next Monday at 8:00, I'll be featuring Terry Thal, who was married to Dave Van Ronk and was Bob Dylan's first manager. And she has a book, My Greenwich Village, Bob, Dave, and me. And it's a great book. And so I have a 2-part series with her. So that's coming up next week. And I hope you can tune in. And if you like this video, this interview, please like and share, because that helps my channel. And so thanks for watching, and lots of love, and keep smiling and keep sweet. Join the Smile Revolution. Bye-bye. It's called the Smile Revolution that comes, goes round and back to you. So smile, smile.